Hello, random person on the internet. If you've clicked on this video, it means that you have at least some passing familiarity with and an interest in science. Now, I don't know about you, but I've spent many years listening to endless debates on the scientific theory of evolution. And during many of these debates, I've noticed that those arguing against evolution often make a specific scary claim about it. This specific claim comes in many shapes and forms. No matter what form of it I witnessed, I've seen it being repeated so many times that it really makes me feel like it must be convincing to a large proportion of people. I've also not seen anyone address such a grave concern thoroughly enough for my taste. So let's remedy that today. What exactly is this damning claim against the theory of evolution, you may ask? Well, whenever the idea of common descent or evolution is being debated, the opponents of evolution make the claim that if common descent is taught to people, it will make us treat each other without the dignity and respect that is deserved by a fellow human being. In case you are unfamiliar with common descent, defined broadly, it is the concept which indicates that all life on Earth share a common ancestor, or put in more everyday terms, all life forms on Earth are related to one another and as such share ancestry. To make sure that I'm not trivializing their argument against this concept or misrepresenting it, let me expand on that a little so that you can grasp their objections better. What they mean to say is that they have a worldview where they're required to think of humans as unquestionably special and not just an animal. That worldview may be purely cultural or born out of religious traditions. Either way, their fear is that grouping human beings with the rest of the animals out there demotes us from our elevated status in that hierarchy and the associated sense of security we always enjoyed. On top of that, they argue that telling people that they're related to other apes is an implicit acceptance and an encouragement of ape-like behavior in humans. Put simply, if we are just another kind of ape, why not act like one? At this point, I'd love to have you, dear viewer, pause and comment on this video to let me know if you agree with their sentiment. This way, once you hear all my objections to this view, you can comment again to let me know if I at least managed to make a good case against this anti-evolution outlook. Now that we have established things, let's look at the different angles from which this claim does not sit right with me. Angle 1. It's a logical fallacy. This one is just too easy, so let's start here. The very first thing I find obviously wrong with this way of thinking is that instead of proving that evolutionary biology is wrong and common descent is a lie, this argument relies on a sad and scary what-if situation as a consequence for evolution being true. Not that I agree with them on this, but even if they were correct about the sadness, it still wouldn't prove evolution wrong. It would just prove that the world is a sad and scary place. That may not be the type of world we wish to build or live in, but who says that the world exists to cater to our sensitivities? Angle 2. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of science. As far as science is concerned, it is mostly a categorization issue. In case you have not noticed, life is breathtakingly diverse. There are some estimated 22,000 types of just ants out there. Good Lord! Can you guess how many different species of life forms we've got in total? Of course, nobody knows the exact number, but the most recent estimates tend to cluster between 8 to 9 million. By the way, this is just the estimate for the complex forms like animals, plants, fungi, etc. It doesn't even include the vastly bigger collection of bacteria and viruses. My point here is that there are too many life forms out there, and they need to be grouped into meaningful types. This grouping is done based on a collection of traits that all members of a given type share. In that classification system, if we zoomed into kingdom, we'd see that it can be further subdivided into 5 to 6 smaller groups. Generally speaking, if a life form has the traits defined for Animalia, they are then labeled as animals. That is all there is to it. It is a way to organize and hopefully make our lives less miserable when trying to study and understand life forms. Hopefully, this insight helps you appreciate that science isn't asking you to adopt the lifestyle of other apes. It defines animals based on shared biological and developmental similarities, not based on behavioral similarities. So when science tells you that you are an animal, it is no more telling you to act like a monkey than it is telling a cow to swim like a fish. Angle 3. Classification doesn't tell you what to value. From Einstein, we've learned that E is equal to mc squared, meaning that a given amount of mass will always convert to the same amount of energy. It doesn't matter whether it's a pound of wood or a pound of flesh, or a pound of steel. Converted to pure energy, they will be the same. Even though this has been known for quite a while, surprisingly, people who reject evolution seem to take no issue with this scientific principle. Are you wondering why one would expect them to reject E equals mc squared too? Well, let's follow the exact same line of reasoning as the evolution deniers. Science tells us that E is equal to mc squared, meaning that 200 pounds of a person and 200 pounds of poo-poo are ultimately the same. Therefore, science tells us that a person is the same as a pile of poo-poo. If we teach this in classrooms, our kids will start treating each other without respect and dignity. I hope the absurdity of such reasoning, or rather its lack thereof, is clearer to you now. Nobody makes arguments like that about E is equal to mc squared. You will not find large groups of people giving physicists a hard time over this and claiming that we are teaching people to not value each other. We understand that the energy equivalence between a person and their weight in poo-poo is not to be confused for some sort of qualitative judgment or policy on how to treat a person. Why then do we have this double standard only when it comes to evolutionary biology? Angle 4. My objection to just an animal. A lot of times, I've seen the anti-evolution people react to scientific classification of life forms we discussed earlier by saying, so science teaches us that we are just animals. To me, that seemingly innocuous question is rather problematic. Even the addition of the qualifier just in that question bothers me. I'm talking about the condescension I can sense in that. Hidden behind the question, there seems to be a tendency to look down on non-human life forms. Ironically, many of these people will readily resort to miracle claims to explain all the wonders life on this planet has to offer. But they themselves are the first to belittle all of it by framing being an animal as something insignificant. So which is it? Are they wonderful or meh? I've also noticed that the type of people who tend to be overly sensitive to being labeled an animal also tend to know very little about biology, or science in general. This is not an insult. I will gladly admit that the same type of people often show some degree of appreciation for the beauty in nature. The problem is, despite being the type who gives this lip service to how wonderful nature is, they are the first to disrespect it. This is not a nature documentary, but let me just briefly discuss one random animal to illustrate my point here. Did you know that octopuses have blue blood? Did you know that they have 3 hearts? Did you know that 2/3 of their brain is actually distributed in their arms? Did you know that they can learn to solve a puzzle by watching someone else do it? Did you know that they want you to like this video and click subscribe? How fascinating is that? With their intelligence, I'm convinced they'd be our overlords if they were able to transfer their knowledge to, their offsprings. That is just one creature out of the countless you can find out there in the wild. Yet there seems to be so many fascinating things to learn about them. Same is true when you take interest in the lives and stories of other life forms on this planet. Even if you grew up watching animal shows on TV, you must have witnessed some of it. I don't know about you, but whenever I watch documentaries on other life forms, I can't help but wonder just how many more ways of being alive are there that I will never finish learning about in the short time I have on this planet. Even if all you ever did for education was to watch documentaries on Animal Planet or something, I would still expect you to have more respect for other beings. I'd expect you to know that not even love, fairness, or empathy are exclusive to us humans. I'd expect you to realize that we are all struggling to survive in our own ways. An eagle cannot dive as deep into the ocean as a whale, but that's okay. A whale cannot outrun a cheetah, but that's okay too. Can you outrun a cheetah? Thought so. It is utterly irrelevant as to how human-like other animals may or may not be. That doesn't make them lesser beings any more than it makes you lesser for not outrunning a cheetah. That type of thinking is the result of an ill-informed human-centric bias. Other animals on this planet are not there to stroke your ego and have you win some sort of superiority contest. I hope I've been able to clearly outline most, if not all, of my objections to the anti-evolution argument we explored today. I hope now you can easily see that it is a logical fallacy to start with. You not liking what science reveals about the nature of things is not an argument against the finding. And you not understanding what science means when it says things is not an argument against reality. Don't even get me started on my rant about when people say, "But it's just a theory." I hope you are now convinced that this sentiment against common descent is not only deeply rooted in a lack of education in science, but also an ironic lack of respect for other life forms. People unfairly conflate our place in the tree of life according to the scientific classification system with the entirely different matter of how we treat one another. As I've already stated in my objection to the condescending just an animal framing of things, I believe that a general lack of empathy and understanding of non-human life contributes a lot to this sentiment. My question for you then is, how do we fix it? If you are interested in fixing that, if you are interested in siding with reason and evidence against fallacies and prejudice, please consider supporting content like this. You can do so by liking this video, sharing it, or subscribing to this channel. This has been the Scientalist. See you in the next video.